No one ever saw her board the last train from North Station, but her name was printed clearly on the manifest, in ink that hadn't faded, under a date burned into memory. There was no luggage left behind, no witness who remembered her stepping onto the platform, and yet for more than 2 decades, her photograph hung on the station wall, Forever 22, smiling faintly at something just beyond the frame. That night, the train left at 11:47 p.m. Heavy fog rolled across the tracks like a breath held too long. Somewhere near track 6, a blue scarf was found, twisting through the air before landing in the rails below. Some say the scarf belonged to her. Others claim it wasn't wind that made it move, but something else, something watching. 26 years passed. Most people forgot. Some tried to. But then the same train that left that night returned, empty. At first glance, no conductor, no passengers, just silence and a single seat marked with a name. That name? Matthew Carter. He didn't exist on any schedule, and no one knew why he was there. But the moment he stepped off, everything started to unravel. What would you do if a part of your past, one you never even knew was missing, suddenly came back looking for you? And what if it held the key to a truth your family had spent their whole life hiding? Many people believe the past is something we leave behind, buried beneath memories and silent. But the truth is, it waits, patient. In photographs, no one takes down. In stations, no one visits anymore. In names, no one speaks. Until one day someone shows up asking the wrong question. Or maybe the right one. North Station wasn't abandoned, but it felt like it had been left behind by time. Ivy climbed the stone pillars out front, and the smell of old paper lingered in the air, like it had its own memory. Only 2 trains passed through now. No one ever arrived on purpose. They arrived because they had nowhere else to go. The only thing that ever changed was the photo of the missing girl. Every few years, someone printed a new copy. But her face? It stayed the same. Charlotte Evans. Last seen, May 14, 1999. Eyes green. Hair dark blonde, last known sighting, boarding the 11:47 train to nowhere. Matthew Carter had never been to North Station before, or so he thought. But when he stepped off that returning train, wearing a scarf he didn't remember packing, he felt something familiar in the air, like the scent of rain on pavement. He hadn't walked in years. He didn't ask questions. He didn't speak. He walked straight to the photograph by track 4 and stared into Charlotte Evans's eyes like they had been waiting for him. He wasn't the only one watching. An older woman sat on the bench behind him, wrinkled hands, silver gray curls, a worn coat that had seen too many winters. Her name was Judith Hale, and she had come to the station every Sunday for 24 years. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at Matthew the way someone might stare at a ghost they weren't expecting to see again. "You look just like him," she said eventually. "Same eyes, same way of standing still, like you're hearing something no one else can." Matthew turned. "Who?" "My son. Christopher," she replied. "He died in 2001. He was in love with Charlotte." Matthew sat beside her, unsure why. "She disappeared," Judith continued, "but not like people disappear when they run away. It was different. I don't think she ever got off that train. And I don't think she ever meant to leave him behind." Matthew swallowed hard. He didn't know why he had come. The letter he received had no return address, just one sentence written in black ink. "Take the last train to North Station." It didn't make sense. But then again, neither did the scarf he found in his closet or the dream that kept repeating every night. Charlotte standing on a moving train, holding something out to him he could never quite reach. The bench creaked under his weight. The photo on the wall shifted slightly in its frame. He leaned forward, staring at the edges of Charlotte's face. And then he noticed something. Just above her shoulder, barely visible, was a reflection in the train window behind her. It was a young boy. And he looked exactly like Matthew. Matthew remained in front of Charlotte's photograph for what felt like hours, long enough for the station to grow so quiet. He could hear the flickering of the overhead lights. His fingers hovered near the glass frame, eyes locked onto hers, not the static image, but something behind her gaze. It felt like staring at someone who hadn't forgotten him, even if they'd never met. Behind him, Judith Hale stood. She'd aged softly but carried years in her shoulders. She stepped closer and placed a small envelope beside him on the bench, one she had carried for decades, too afraid to open and too stubborn to throw away. "She wrote this the week before she disappeared," Judith said quietly. "Left it at our door. Said she needed Christopher to read it. He never did." Matthew opened the envelope with care. Inside was a single photograph, grainy and color-faded. Charlotte standing by the train, her arms wrapped around a man. Not Christopher, a different man. Matthew? But the date on the back read May 11th, 1999, before he was even born. His throat tightened. This can't be real. Judith didn't blink. That's what I thought too. But I see now. This place doesn't follow rules. North Station? It waits for people like you. His hands shook. In his mind, a memory tried to surface. A train window, a girl in a blue jacket, and the sound of wind calling his name. He didn't understand it. Yet somehow, it didn't feel new. It felt remembered. He couldn't sleep that night. He stayed in the abandoned supervisor's quarters above the station. Dust covered the furniture like snow. The station clock on the wall had stopped precisely at 11:47 p.m., Charlotte's departure time, and as he stared at it, he wondered how long time had been holding its breath. That night, he dreamed again. He was on a train that stretched forever. Cabin after cabin passed, doors swinging, lights flickering. At the far end, Charlotte stood, her back to him, hair tucked into a familiar scarf. She turned slowly, as if knowing he'd always been watching, and reached for him. When he woke up, the scarf was wrapped around his shoulders, the same one from the dream. Matthew walked the platforms the next morning. North Station wasn't abandoned, but it was hollow, like something had been removed from it long ago and never put back. He wandered past Track 6, past the rusted service tunnel gate near Track 8, until he saw her. Not Charlotte, a child, a girl in a yellow dress, swinging her legs from the edge of a bench, humming a tune that made the air feel thick. "Do you know how to go back?" she asked without turning. Matthew froze. Back where? She looked up. Her eyes were too old for her face. Back to where it broke. Before he could respond, the scarf slipped from his shoulder, caught the wind, and drifted toward the tunnel. He chased it. Something inside him already knew what he'd find there. Beyond the locked gate, the air changed, thinner, colder, like stepping into a dream while still awake. And at the tunnel's end stood a train, clean, polished, lights glowing faintly inside like a memory trying to be remembered. The doors open. He stepped in. The cabin was empty, save for one seat, with his full name embroidered across the headrest. Matthew Christopher Carter. He sat, and the train began to move. Outside, the windows no longer showed tracks. They showed moments, his mother crying alone in a dark kitchen. A drawer opening, revealing a faded photo of a man he'd never met. The backyard garden where something had been quietly buried long ago. And then Charlotte, alive. She entered the cabin slowly and sat across from him. "You found your way back," she said, her voice neither ghostly nor distant. She looked exactly as she did in the photo, timeless. "Are you real?" he asked. "I was. And maybe in some way, I still am." "You were with my father?" She nodded. "He didn't know about you. I never got the chance to tell him." Matthew's eyes burned. "Why me? Why now?" "Because you never stopped looking," Charlotte whispered, "even when you didn't know what you were searching for." Matthew leaned forward, hands clenched. "What happened to you?" "I left that night thinking I'd come back, but something pulled me, not away from Christopher or even this world, but into a place between. I didn't belong to the past anymore, but I didn't belong to the future either." She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded page, a letter written in her handwriting, the same one from the envelope Judith gave him. "I meant for your father to read this, but maybe it was always meant for you." He unfolded it. "If I disappear, don't follow. It won't bring me back. But if someone finds this, someone I haven't met yet, know that love never ends. It just changes where it lives." The train slowed. Charlotte looked out the window. "You have to go now." "No, not yet." She smiled sadly. "You were never meant to stay." The train hissed, stopped, and the cabin door opened. But before stepping out, Matthew asked, "Will I remember you?" "You always have," she said. He opened his eyes on the bench at North Station, the scarf in his hands. But this time, Judith wasn't alone. Another figure stood beside her, a woman with tired eyes and shaking hands, his mother. Her name was Sarah Carter, and she had not returned to the station in over 2 decades. Judith had contacted her, told her what she'd seen, who had arrived. She didn't believe it, until now. "Matthew," she whispered. He stood. "Mom?" Her hands flew to her mouth, and then she broke, stepping into his arms like she might never let go. Judith smiled softly, then stepped back, letting the past reconcile itself. Charlotte hadn't come back, but she had left something behind, and Matthew had brought it home. The breeze carried the scent of old leaves and rusted iron, like North Station itself had finally exhaled. Sarah Carter stood with both hands on her son's face, as if trying to memorize him. She hadn't seen that scarf in over 2 decades, but she knew exactly what it was. She'd hidden it herself, tucked deep in a cedar chest behind boxes of untouched photos and unanswered questions. Matthew didn't speak. He simply wrapped his arms around her, tighter than he ever had before. Her breath hitched against his shoulder as if grief and relief were wrestling inside her at the same time. "I didn't know how to tell you," Sarah finally whispered. "I thought if I buried it all deep enough, it wouldn't come looking for you." "It did," Matthew said softly. "It never stopped." Judith Hale stepped back, watching the two of them in silence. Her eyes glistened with quiet satisfaction, not because the mystery was solved, but because something had been healed. After 24 years of waiting, someone had finally come home. The 3 of them sat on the bench by track 4, the same one where the photograph of Charlotte had once hung, but the frame was gone now. Matthew had taken it down earlier that morning. He hadn't told them why. But as they sat together, Sarah noticed it resting beside his backpack, cleaned, polished, and empty. "She doesn't need to be up there anymore," he said, answering the question she hadn't asked. She was never just missing. She was waiting. Waiting for what? Sarah asked. For someone to remember her the right way. They sat for hours, saying very little. Judith eventually excused herself, leaving mother and son alone at the edge of the tracks. Sarah leaned into Matthew's side, more fragile than he remembered. "You look like him," she said. "Christopher?" Sarah nodded. "Same jaw, same eyes. He wanted to name you Carter, his last name. I chose Matthew after my brother. I didn't think you'd ever ask." "I didn't know what to ask," he admitted. She smiled. "And now, you do." The weeks that followed felt different. The world hadn't changed, but something in Matthew had. He no longer moved through life trying to outrun silence. He began to embrace it. He stopped searching for something undefined and instead began rebuilding what was within reach. Back home, Sarah opened the old trunk in the attic and brought down boxes of memories. She and Matthew sorted through them together, photos of Charlotte and Christopher, old letters, postcards written in faint ink. There were unfinished poems in Christopher's handwriting, Charlotte's voice on an old answering machine tape. One night, Sarah handed Matthew a small, black cassette. He recorded this the day after she vanished. I could never bring myself to play it. Matthew placed it into an old tape player and hit play. Christopher's voice came through, cracking at the edges. "She was supposed to meet me here. She said we'd leave together. I waited until the last train left the station, and then she was just gone." He paused, then added, "I don't think she left me. I think something took her." Static. Then the recording clicked off. Matthew stared at the machine. He didn't know what that something was. Time? Regret? A doorway that never closed? In the months that followed, he made a decision. He returned to North Station, not to chase answers, but to give something back. With Sarah's blessing, he restored the old operator's room above the ticket booths, cleaned it, repaired the floorboards, repainted the walls. It became a place for remembrance, a small archive where people could leave memories of those they'd lost. Photos, notes, objects that once meant something. People came, quietly, gratefully. Some brought tokens of family they never found again. Others left stories of friends who disappeared during wartime, or love letters that never reached their destination. One woman left a wedding dress still wrapped in plastic. A man donated a watch that had stopped ticking in his father's hand. Matthew cataloged each item with care. He named the room the waiting room. One morning, while organizing donations, Matthew opened a manila envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo, faded but intact. It showed a child no more than 6 years old standing near the train at North Station, and just behind him, slightly blurred, stood a young woman, Charlotte Evans. It wasn't a look-alike, it was her. Matthew recognized himself in the photo, too. The child in the picture was him. He stared at the date stamped on the back, May 1999. His hand trembled. He'd been there, not in a dream, not in a vision. Somehow he had crossed paths with Charlotte before he even understood what memory was. The scarf, the recurring dreams, the sense of being followed by something he couldn't name. It wasn't imagination. North Station had been holding the memory for him until he was ready to see it. Not all doors are visible. Not all meetings are conscious. Sometimes love wraps itself around time and waits. He placed the photo in the archive. No label, no explanation. Just a truth too quiet to name. A few days later, Matthew walked back to track 4. He sat on the bench where it all began. The wind was soft. The sun filtered through the broken glass of the station roof, casting golden patches on the concrete floor. Birds called distantly. A train horn moaned far off, but not for him. He wasn't waiting anymore. Then he noticed something on the bench beside him. A folded paper. He opened it. Inside were 2 words, written in handwriting he'd only seen once before. "Thank you." He looked up. No one was there. But the scarf? It was gone. And he smiled. Charlotte had finally left the station. Did you enjoy the story? Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Enjoy and comment below about your experience listening to this story.